Alright, hey class, here's the review video for the Great Depression. So the Great Depression really started because after World War I, farmers had a lot of extra land, tools, and food. And in class we talked about when there's a surplus or there's more than enough, that means the prices are going to go down. Because the prices are going to go down, farmers are going to get into debt. They're not going to be making as much money. Because they're not making as much money, they cannot pay what they owe. So they're going to lose their farms, they're going to lose their equipment, and some of them are going to lose their land. The next thing is factories laid off workers because they were producing more goods than they could sell. A lot of the farmers were struggling, a lot of other people, because people weren't buying a lot, they were producing more goods than they could sell, so the more they were having a bigger surplus, so that means prices go down, they're not selling as much, they're not making as much. Remember in class we talked about how being laid off means you're not fired, they just have to let you go because they cannot afford to pay you. What the coal and lumber industry suffered as people switched to oil and concrete. In class, we talked about how when technology changes, we talked about how the U.S. Postal Service suffered when we went to email and how other things happen when we go. So that kind of thing. Next, unemployment rose. Unemployment is just the condition of being out of work. Normally, it's about 5 to 7%. It reached as high as some estimates of being close to 30% during the Great Depression. So a third of the people in the United States roughly are without a job. Another problem that this kind of rolled everything into one is that people bought many things by promising to pay for them later. This is called credit. I gave y'all the example of my wife and I buying a house, and how much we could borrow was our credit, and how much we actually borrowed was our debt. So credit is how much you can borrow, and debt is how much that you actually borrow. So a lot of people were doing that, and they're not going to have any money left over, and then they're not going to be able to pay for their debt, and they're going to lose it, and its businesses are losing money, and it's a snowball effect. So you have all of these different events, from the farmers not being able to sell their food and having too much and the prices going down. You have factories laying off workers. You have coal and lumber industry suffering. You have unemployment going up. You have people not being able to pay for their debt. All of these are going to be rolled up, and it's not just one event that causes the Great Depression. It's multiple events. Then you have the stock market crash. Remember, the stock market is a place where stocks are bought and sold, where you buy parts of companies. We talked about how if I bought into Apple, because I like Apple products, I bought into Apple and the price on my share goes up, that means I make money. But if it goes down, I lose money. So the way stocks and stuff works is people buy shares of stocks and companies. The price of each share rises. So hopefully when more people are buying shares, the stock is going to go up. The stock goes up, people are going to get rich. I can now sell mine. If I bought it for $100, it's now worth $500. I can sell it and make $400. More shares are going to sold, more people are going to be part of it. People who don't have that much money are going to look and go for the banks, and the banks are going to borrow money, or going to lend money rather, and people are going to borrow money from the banks. And so more shares are sold. That's a great thing. But what's going to happen is the banks are going to run out of money, so they're going to try to play the stocks and make more money, but then they're low on money anyway. So then the prices start to drop. So if I bought my stocks for $100, they go up to $500, I made money. But if they start going down, I might want to decide to sell my stocks so I can save some of the money. Well, when I'm selling, other people might say, hey, it's a good idea for me to go ahead and sell too. So I'm going to go ahead and sell my stock. Well, then panic is going to strike. Everybody wants to sell their stock right now. Well, that means the stock market's going to crash. When the stock market crashes, banks are going to close. People may lose their money. When banks close and businesses lose their money, businesses lose their buyers. People lose their jobs. That's when you have that high unemployment. Businesses are going to end up closing. More people are going to be without work. And see, it's just a snowball effect from all of this. Americans could become poor. And that's going to lead right into hard times. By 1933, 15 million people were unemployed. People could not afford housing, so they lived in shanty towns, or places where people lived in tents. They called these Hoovervilles because they felt Herbert Hoover didn't do enough. This was the president. He was Herbert Hoover. Did not believe that the government should spend money providing relief for the people. He believed that the economy would get better on its own, so he just didn't do anything. Many people blamed him for the Depression, and so, like I said earlier, these shanty towns were called Hoovervilles. Newspapers were called Hoover blankets, and you know when you pull out your pockets, if you wave those around, those were called your Hoover flags. Charities started soup kitchens to give people hot food because people could not afford to eat. A few people got married and had children. Many women worked for the first time ever. Before now, they were staying home. And many children quit school and went to work. Now, before this, children started going to school more. We talked about the American Federation of Labor and child labor. It kind of went away, but now nobody really cared because people had to make ends meet. They had to be able to afford everything. Then along comes Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal. He becomes president in 1932. He's going to want to help the country immediately. Within 100 days in office, many new programs became the law. For example, the New Deal, FDR developed new programs he called the New Deal. These were supposed to help the country. Now we're going to flip through a couple of these that you need to know for your test. The CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps. It employed thousands of young men. It paid $30 a month, which was a lot back then. They lived in camps and worked in parks and forests. They helped to build the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. You had the WPA, you had the Tennessee Valley Authority. They helped build 50 dams along rivers in the South to prevent flooding. Not only did they prevent flooding, but they actually provided the rural area of the Tennessee River Valley with electricity, which was huge. Got the Social Security Board, the Rural Electrification Administration, and then those are all the great things that the New Deal did. On top of the New Deal, or the Great Depression, everything's going along, and the New Deal trying to bring us out of it, you have the Dust Bowl. Just as the new programs were helping farmers, a severe drought hit the dark brown area. Soil turned to dust and high winds scattered it. People were used too much topsoil. They were overplanting it and overplanting it. And then we had this huge drought, and so the whole thing at the top was just dust. They called Black Sunday. It's the worst dust storm in history. It reached thousands of miles wide and tens of miles tall. Here's a photo of a huge dust storm, and you can see how big it is compared to that car. Here's another truck. Then you can see the deposits of the dust. It just left it there. So the Dust Bowl was a significant thing that helped just worsen the Great Depression. The New Deal started to pick farmers up, and then the dust storm just kind of kicked them back down. Then we've got migrant workers. Farmers had to leave their homes in order to find work, so they became migrant workers, moving from place to harvest crops. Overall, one of the things you need to know is that the Great Depression was not made better. It was made better by the New Deal, but it wasn't completely stopped by the New Deal. It's going to be World War II before we ever can pull ourselves out of the Great Depression. All right, your quiz is on Friday, October 26th. It's 15 questions, no review questions, so please just study this information. Just worry about the TVA and the CCC as far as the New Deal Acts, and you should be good to go. If you have any questions, get me on Remind, email me. Thanks.